Charisma does not begin with charm. It begins with truth. It begins in the quiet moments when no one is watching, when you choose dignity over performance, when you stop chasing applause and begin building presence. You've been told that charisma is a talent, but the truth is far more powerful. Charisma is a reflection of how aligned you are with your inner world. The world tells you to speak louder. Real charisma teaches you to listen deeper. It's not about being the most interesting person in the room. It's about being the most interested. As Dale Carnegie reminded us, you don't win people by dazzling them. You win their hearts by caring, by paying attention, by making them feel, if only for a moment, like they are the only soul in the world that matters. And you cannot fake that kind of presence. The person who lights up the room is not the one trying to shine. It's the one who walks in carrying peace, carrying ease, carrying the kind of calm that doesn't demand to be known, but cannot be forgotten. That kind of energy cannot be copied. It is born from self-respect, from knowing who you are without needing others to validate it. You don't build magnetic charisma by dominating you. Build it by resonating with truth, with emotion, with kindness. And kindness, contrary to what you've been taught, is not weakness. It is emotional intelligence in motion. It is the quiet decision to remain human in a world that rewards coldness. It is the refusal to become hard just because you've been hurt. The ones who leave an imprint on others are not always the boldest. They are the ones who can hold eye contact and make you feel seen. The ones who don't rush the conversation. The ones who remember your name, your story, your silence. They're not trying to be impressive. They are simply present. And presence is a superpower. When you are fully in the moment, when your mind is not rehearsing or retreating, when your energy is not split between performance and insecurity, you become magnetic. You stop seeking connection. You become it. But to live this way requires courage. The courage to be authentic in a world that worships masks. The courage to speak gently in a culture that confuses loudness with strength. The courage to hold your boundaries without building walls. Because real charisma doesn't come from being agreeable. It comes from being unshakably clear. People don't trust the polished. They trust the congruent. The ones whose words match their actions. The ones who don't need to be everything to everyone. The ones who can say, "This is who I am," without bitterness, without apology, without fear. And the moment you stop negotiating your essence to fit in, that is the moment you begin to stand out. Charisma lives in that quiet confidence, in the space between needing to be loved and being love itself, in the posture of someone who no longer proves, but simply is. You don't build that kind of power overnight. You build it choice by choice, breath by breath, by choosing to trust yourself when no one else does, by choosing to be kind when it's easier to be clever, by choosing to listen, to pause, to care. The world is starving for realness, not more noise, not more sparkle, substance. And substance begins with solitude, with self-respect, with emotional discipline, with the inner decision to no longer abandon your truth just to be accepted by people who don't even accept themselves. Because here's the paradox. The more you try to be liked, the more invisible you become. But the moment you commit to being true, people begin to notice you. The moment you stop rehearsing and start being, you start to attract the kind of souls who recognize your frequency. You don't need to prove anything to them. You don't need to convince them. They feel you. They feel your calm. They feel your care. They feel your power, not because it's loud, but because it's real. And that is magnetic. Charisma deepens the moment you stop hiding your humanity. The moment you stop pretending to be perfect and allow yourself to be whole, because people don't connect with invincibility. They connect with truth. They connect with the light in your eyes and the cracks in your voice. They trust you, not because you've never fallen, but because you've learned how to rise without losing your softness. And softness is rare in a world hardened by performance. But you don't need to be hard to be powerful. You don't need to be guarded to be respected. The most magnetic presence you can ever carry is authentic emotional integrity, the courage to show up fully, without overexposing, without collapsing into the need to be saved. Vulnerability is not confession. It is alignment. It is the quiet strength of being so deeply rooted in your self-worth that you no longer fear being misunderstood. That strength is built in private, not in the spotlight, not in the applause, but in the hours when you chose growth over ego, healing over blame, reflection over reaction. You looked in the mirror and faced the parts of yourself that used to scare you. You stopped hiding your sensitivity. You stopped apologizing for your truth. You stopped filtering yourself to fit into a mold someone else designed for you. And as you did, your energy shifted. Because charisma is not just how you speak, it's how you carry yourself. It's the energetic signature people feel when they enter your presence. Do they feel rushed? Do they feel judged? Or do they feel safe? Not because you're pleasing them, but because you're honoring yourself. Your presence teaches people how to treat you long before your words do. And that's where boundaries come in. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are bridges that protect the sacredness of who you are. They are not rejection. They are direction. And the people who respect you the most will not test them. They will honor them. Because your boundaries are a reflection of your self-awareness, a quiet declaration that says, "This is how I love myself, and how I will love you." The more clearly you draw that line, not out of anger, but out of wisdom, the more people trust you. Because people are not drawn to what is available to everyone. They are drawn to what is self-contained, what is whole, what is rare. And the rarest thing in the world is someone who knows themselves and doesn't flinch. Someone who isn't threatened by disagreement. Someone who doesn't disappear into approval. Someone who listens more than they speak, not because they're unsure, but because they're grounded. Someone who can hold space for another's experience without abandoning their own. That's charisma. It's not learned in scripts, it's earned in solitude. And when you begin to embody this, when you begin to show up without masks, when you begin to guard your energy with grace, when you begin to value your peace more than you value being liked, your presence becomes a sanctuary. People feel safer around you because you feel safe within yourself. And that's the shift. You don't enter a room needing anything from anyone. You walk in carrying something, a tone, a calm, a clarity, not perfection, not polish, but presence, the kind of presence that doesn't chase attention because it commands respect, not through fear, not through manipulation, through alignment. You don't dominate, you invite. You don't overpower, you resonate. And the people who once overlooked you, they start to wonder what changed. They start to lean in. But you're no longer performing for them. You're no longer proving. You've let go of the audience. You've become your own. And that, right there, is the secret. Charisma is not always announced with thunder. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it's in the pause between sentences. The way you look someone in the eye without flinching. The way you listen without trying to fix. The way you respond, not with noise, but with knowing. The most magnetic people do not demand the spotlight, it finds them, simply because their stillness speaks louder than performance ever could. You've seen it. That person who says little, yet leaves an imprint long after the room empties. That person who doesn't need to explain themselves because their energy is already in full expression. They are not loud, but they are undeniable. And the reason they move like that, they don't abandon themselves for approval. You feel them because they've spent time feeling themselves. They've listened to their thoughts. They've watched their emotional patterns. They've sat in silence long enough to know what they truly value, and they no longer barter their values for temporary validation. When you get to that point, every movement becomes intentional. Every conversation becomes sacred, not because you're trying to impress, but because you respect your own presence enough not to waste it. You slow down, you speak slower, you breathe deeper. You listen not just to respond, but to receive. And in that slowing, you expand. You become more than a personality. You become a presence. Presence is rare in a world addicted to attention. But you are no longer addicted. You are awake. You are no longer the person who checks their phone to avoid discomfort. You are no longer the one who fills every silence with sound, just to prove you belong. You belong already, not because of what you say, but because of how you see yourself, others, life. And when you truly see, you stop performing. You stop selling yourself short. You stop trying to be liked by everyone, and instead become deeply trusted by a few. You begin to move with quiet power. Not power over people, but power over your own reactions, power over your own energy, power over where you place your attention. That's the power most never master, because it doesn't make headlines. It doesn't trend, but it builds a foundation under your life so unshakable that storms start to pass through you instead of wrecking you. This is the charisma born from discipline, the discipline to not respond to every trigger, the discipline to hold your center when others lose theirs, the discipline to say no without guilt, the discipline to choose solitude when the crowd confuses you, the discipline to wait not in fear, but in faith for the connections that match your growth. And when those connections come, you don't chase them, you honor them, because you now understand. You don't need everyone to like you. You only need the right ones to feel your truth. You only need to be felt, not for what you pretend to be, but for who you are when no one's watching. That's the kind of energy that doesn't fade. That's the kind of energy people remember. And that energy comes from being fully in your life, fully engaged with your now, fully rooted in the miracle of your presence. You don't escape into future fantasies. You don't shrink into old pain. You show up, you breathe, you see. And in doing so, you invite the world to meet you at your level, not because you're better, but because you've become clear. And clarity, more than charisma, is the real magnet. Charisma is not just in how you enter the room, it's in how the room feels different after you leave. It's not just what people see, it's what they sense. And what they sense is not your outfit, your smile, or even your words. What they truly remember is your energy, the stability of it, the cleanliness of it, the depth of it. In a world where emotions fluctuate like weather, emotional consistency is charisma. When people know what version of you they're going to meet, not because you're fake, but because you're anchored, they begin to trust you. When you don't let every little shift in tone, opinion, or outcome shake your core, you become a lighthouse in their storm. The most magnetic people are not those who feel nothing. They are those who can hold their emotion with grace. They've mastered the space between stimulus and response. They don't react impulsively. They don't collapse into chaos. They respond with clarity, with awareness, with self-respect. Because they've learned, your reaction is your reputation. And when you respond from peace, from presence, from purpose, you teach others, silently, how to do the same. This is the elegance that needs no performance. the presence that doesn't beg to be admired. This is the kind of charisma that cannot be replicated because it's not external, it's earned through inner work. You become unforgettable not because you impress, but because you calibrate. You hold such a calm, steady energy that people start to regulate themselves in your presence. They feel safer. They speak slower. They feel more like themselves, and they don't even know why. That is your gift. You become the one who doesn't flinch at discomfort, the one who doesn't fold when misunderstood, the one who doesn't carry the heaviness of needing to be seen because you already see yourself. And when you see yourself clearly, you no longer rely on others to reflect your worth. You carry it in your voice, in your breath, in your walk. You don't shout it, you radiate it. This quiet self-respect becomes your signature frequency. And the ones who recognize it, the rare, self-aware, emotionally mature ones, they don't just like you, they trust you. Because they feel you aren't trying to win them over. You're not trying to fit in, you're simply being. And that being is rooted in something most people haven't found yet: inner peace. That peace is magnetic. It doesn't speak loudly. It doesn't try to be everywhere. But it draws in the right opportunities, the right relationships, the right timing, without force, without chase, without noise. Because when your internal world is in order, your external world begins to organize itself around you. When your emotions are no longer erratic, your reality becomes reliable. And the people who belong in your life, they will feel it. They will match it. They will stay, not because you convinced them, but because your energy called them. This is the charisma of still water, deep, clear, unbothered. It doesn't need waves to be powerful. Its power is in its depth, and so is yours. Real charisma is not about being the center of attention. It's about being the reason someone else feels centered in your presence. Not because you give them all the answers, but because you hold space where they don't have to perform, don't have to pretend, don't have to earn your interest. They just feel safe. You've become the kind of person who listens without waiting to speak. The kind who doesn't hijack someone's pain just to insert your own story. The kind who knows when to offer words and when silence says more. Because you've realized something few people understand. Influence is not loud, it's precise. And the deepest influence doesn't require persuasion. It comes from emotional generosity, from the willingness to make others feel valued, not through flattery, but through genuine attention. Not because you want something, but because your presence is already full. There's nothing more attractive than someone who doesn't need the spotlight because they carry light within them. That inner fullness allows you to focus outward, to elevate others without losing yourself. That's what Dale Carnegie knew so well. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in others than in 2 years trying to get others interested in you. Because it's not what you say that makes people trust you. It's how safe they feel around you. And safety doesn't come from perfection. It comes from humility. Humble people don't shrink. They shine without arrogance. They lead without needing a throne. They know who they are, but they also know that everyone they meet is carrying a story that matters just as much. So they listen. They ask. They remember. They don't interrupt vulnerability with ego. They don't make someone struggle about their own. They sit with discomfort. They hold eye contact. They treat the quiet person in the corner with the same respect as the one holding the mic. And in doing so, they create a space where trust can breathe. That's magnetic. Because the moment you make someone feel truly seen, you are never forgotten. You leave fingerprints, not on their skin, but on their self-worth. And that is the charisma no one can teach, because it's not a technique. It's a choice, a way of being. It's the ability to pour into others from a place of overflow, not scarcity. It's the wisdom to know when to speak truth and when to let your silence wrap around someone like a warm coat on a cold day. You see, emotional maturity is magnetic. It's rare. It's unmistakable. It's the quiet power of someone who doesn't react just to protect their pride, who doesn't gossip just to fill the air, who doesn't betray confidences to gain a moment of connection. As the old saying goes, never trust the one who tells you other people's secrets. Real power keeps trust like treasure. And that's what you've become trustworthy. Not just in what you say, but in how you carry what others give you. With care, with silence, with reverence. And from that place, your charisma becomes effortless. Not something you put on, not something you project, but something you are. It's in the pauses. It's in the way you breathe. It's in how you leave people better than you found them. It's in the rooms you enter with no need to prove, and the way those rooms begin to soften in your presence. Because the most powerful person in any room is the one who doesn't need to dominate it. They simply embody something rare, something deep, something true. And when you've done that work, when you've sat in the fire of your own growth, when you've faced your own shadows, when you've cleaned your energy and healed your wounds and chosen awareness over ego, you become unforgettable. Not because of your resume, not because of your reputation, but because of the way people feel when they're near you. That is legacy. And legacy begins long before the world applauds. It begins in private. In the way you treat people who can do nothing for you. In the way you hold your own integrity when no one would know if you slipped. In the way you live aligned, even when it would be easier to perform. That's what builds magnetic charisma from the inside out. Eventually, you stop asking, how do I make people like me? And start asking, how do I become someone I respect? That's the pivot. That's the moment you cross the invisible line from needing validation to radiating truth. The ones with real charisma aren't rehearsing lines, they're living in alignment. You feel them, not because they perform, but because they're present. And presence, when practiced enough, becomes unforgettable. It becomes your calling card. It walks into the room before you and lingers after you've left. Because presence isn't volume, it's voltage. It's the hum of someone who knows who they are. Not perfectly, not with ego, but with a calm that says, I've come home to myself, and I'm not leaving. And that calm, that silent knowing, is what turns heads without trying. It's what creates space without demanding it. It's what allows you to say few words and have them echo louder than the loudest voice in the room. Charisma without character is manipulation. But charisma with integrity, that's leadership. That's soul in motion. That's what people crave in a world of filters, spin, and half-truths. Someone whose energy matches their words. Someone whose silence carries weight. Someone who doesn't need to be seen, but can't help but be felt. And that's the paradox, isn't it? The moment you stop needing to be seen is the moment you become unforgettable. You no longer chase impressions, you embody essence. You don't try to be impressive, you try to be accurate. You don't stretch yourself to be liked. You settle into who you've always been. And from that place, from that spiritual center, you begin to move through the world like someone who knows they're not here to be consumed, but to be chosen by the right energy, in the right time, for the right reason. You say less because you've mastered the power of silence. You show up less because you've learned the difference between access and presence. You give more because you're no longer afraid of being empty. You love deeper because you've made peace with being alone. And that peace, that quiet, sovereign peace, becomes your gravity. People don't trust what feels desperate. They trust what feels rooted. And when you're rooted in your own values, in your own path, in your own breath, you no longer need to sell yourself. You simply are. The proof of your energy is in your walk, your tone, your eyes. You're no longer advertising. You're emanating. There's a kind of power that doesn't shout, a kind of beauty that doesn't sparkle, a kind of confidence that doesn't dominate, and yet it holds the room. That's the kind of power you've been building, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. It wasn't fast, it wasn't easy, but it's real. And that realness is everything. So let them underestimate you. Let them misunderstand you. Let them talk, spin, guess, project. You're not here to convince them. You're here to become undeniable, not because you said so, but because you showed up with consistency, presence, and a deep understanding of who you are. And when you walk like that, when you speak from that place, when you choose peace over proving, discernment over drama, clarity over chaos, you no longer chase opportunities, they find you. You no longer beg for respect, you embody it. You no longer hope to be seen. You see yourself so clearly that the world cannot help but recognize what's always been there. That is magnetic charisma, born not in noise but in knowing. And now you know. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to be more impressive. You don't need to gather the world's approval like trophies on a dusty shelf. You only need to return. Return to the place inside you that was never confused. Return to the breath that doesn't need applause. Return to the silence that doesn't shrink in the face of noise. Return to the truth that doesn't need to be sold, only remembered. Because charisma was never out there. It was always inside you waiting. Waiting beneath the mask, beneath the noise, beneath the polished image you thought the world needed in order to love you. It was waiting beneath the need to be chosen, beneath the urge to prove, beneath the version of yourself you thought was good enough for the world to respect. But now you've let that version go. Now you walk with the grace of someone who doesn't need to be everything only real. Now you lead with the humility of someone who has seen their shadow and refused to let it define them. Now you show up with the clarity of someone who isn't trying to be liked, but is too rooted not to be respected. And that is unshakable power. The kind of power that enters the room and doesn't pull people in, it awakens them. The kind of presence that doesn't ask, "Do you see me?" It stands tall and says, "I see you." And in that moment, trust is born, not in strategy, not in control, in connection. This is the rare air now, where you don't chase status, where you don't bend to be seen, where you don't shrink to make others comfortable, where you let your light be steady, even if it blinds the ones still hiding in shadow, because you know what it cost you to get here. The nights of doubt, the days of silence, the loneliness of unbecoming, the discomfort of drawing boundaries, the ache of walking away from anything that didn't recognize your worth, and you did it. Not with rage, not with vengeance, but with devotion. Devotion to your own evolution. That devotion is your charisma now. So when they ask you how you did it, how you became so calm, so grounded, so certain, you won't point to tactics. You won't mention charm. You'll simply say, "I stopped abandoning myself." That was the beginning. And now, there is no end. Because every day you wake, the light meets you again. A new mirror, a new moment, a new chance. To walk not for applause, but for alignment. To speak not to impress, but to express. To give not from emptiness, but from overflow. To live not to be remembered, but to remember who you are. And who you are was never average, never forgettable, never small. You are the current. You are the quiet storm. You are the calm that moves mountains without lifting your voice. You are magnetic, not because the world told you so, but because you finally remembered it for yourself. And when you remember, they will too.